probably will finish today. And what I will finish is my exploration of how to relate to a family I've known in pieces and all together over so many decades. And the family is now blowing up and getting into terrible times. And who, to whom is my allegiance? What kind of allegiance? Whom can I help and in what ways? And I'm feeling, as you'll hear, sometimes trapped in between competing desires. And so I am in a conceptual and practical mess, and I am using this experience, talking to my two colleagues here and to whatever audience I pick up, to explore all the complexities of what I'm living through, because this is an enormously challenging burden that I'm now in the middle of. I laid out in the first two presentations many factual, informative issues that have gone on in this family. I've stayed away from imagery and fantasy a lot because I was planning on heading there today, and I will do so. I'm going to work my way up a strange chain. The chain is, I'm going to start with the family members I feel the least connection with and the least experience with, and then come up to the family members who are more and more central and what their centrality is doing to me. The family member who seems the most distant is the word I'll use, is the oldest son. I met him only once, and that was at that terrible meeting when the family was trying to decide what was to happen with the elders as they aged, who was going to be the conservator or the trustee of their family trust and manage affairs after they were too incapacitated to do so. And I was asked to be part of a meeting where these issues could be explored and discussed, and the meeting turned out to be a disaster with all the old hurts and fault lines in the family now breaking open, and people being really upset with each other and disappointed with each other and angry with each other. That is the only time I have had any connection whatsoever with the oldest son. I know how he's described. His parents describe him as being very warm, very kind, and a good child, a good son to them in their older age. That's not the description that his sister has for him at all. She says that he's a con artist, that he listens to his parents and visits them once in a while, and he just says yes, 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 even if he disagrees with them, because he's just buttering them up and showing them that he's loyal and he's a nice person. And he's duplicitous and he's cunning and he's self-preoccupied. And it's not good to try and have a close relationship with him because he will betray you. That is the perception of the other two siblings, if it's not the perception of the parents. The second son, funny word occurred to me. Well, I'll just be silly and real. The second child is a horrible mess. He was always extremely reclusive, as I learned from the family mythology. He played by himself, didn't have many friends, he didn't seem very social. He was diagnosed at age 13 with obsessive compulsive neurosis. And he went to therapy with somebody back then. I was not involved. I didn't even know about this. And I didn't even know what happened to him. At any rate, he's never been close to either of the siblings nor to his parents. He has shown up once or twice a year for a birthday or some ceremonial occasion. And he is married, he has a wife, he comes with his wife, they stay as little time as possible and they leave again, and he interacts as little as possible with them. when the era that we're now in started, when the parents could feel they were becoming more incapacitated and they had to heed what the kids were saying and make better and more thorough plans for what the oncoming period of challenge might be, uh, they turned to him. Their lawyer, who they hired to do wills and trusts, had a bunch of questions about how this should be structured, that should be structured, where they want, who they wanted to be responsible for that. Simple things, for instance, like were there any items of jewelry or special worth in the house that one or another of the children should be named to be the recipient of that. And to a person, mom and dad thought that the younger brother should be involved in this. He was the one that was always meticulous. He was always obsessive about things. He would be the one to interact with the lawyer, and probably he should be the one who got appointed as the trustee of the trust when they were finished drawing up the trust documents, because for sure he would be so careful and cautious. And I think I said in one of my previous presentations, he blew that one up. Uh, he was so niggling about everything, going to read law books, going to read statutes, trying to educate himself about wills and trusts, arguing with the lawyer he was supposed to be consulting with over and over again, or pulling at the lawyer to take extra time to educate him about one of his worries and one of his concerns, that they decided they had to relieve him of that assignment. His very meticulousness was a detriment and was keeping the project from coming to any kind of closure, and for everybody to be more peaceful, that they knew how the future would happen and who was going to be in charge of monitoring how the future was to happen. So at the session I hosted, he was fired. He was relieved of his responsibilities, and he was turned really very angry and started cursing and saying hateful things and saying to his parents, "This proves what I've always known. You've always preferred my brother and not me, and you never let me do anything, and don't let me ever take care of you in any way. So I am done. I'm never going to talk to you again." And he stormed out. So that is my knowledge of him. And he has agreed so far to have an email interchange with his sister, to stay in touch with her, but not even in any virtual way. He won't Zoom with her. He won't show up and go out and have lunch and chat. No, he will only connect with her if he writes emails. And she has to answer him in emails. And then he'll brief her on what he's going through. What he's going through is profound sadness. He feels like his family is destroyed. It will never be restored again. All his bad feelings about being a member of that family have turned out to be justified, and he wants no part of it. He's going to content himself with making a life with his wife and staying away from everybody else, including his sister. And I don't know if I'll be called upon to do anything about this in the future. So, all right, I'm going to be real and raw. I'll tell you what went through my mind as I started saying the last few sentences. I wanted to say, I hate him. I hate him for being so fucking egomaniacal and self-centered and petulant and sulky. He's like a very wounded, damaged small child. Oh, I'm going to take my marbles and go home if I can't play marbles with you in the way I want. He has phrase, and it's his way or the highway. And then he is a professional victim, to use some of the jargon of our profession. It's all about how he's been injured and what the terrible things are that's done to him. He never sees himself as the agent of any kind of destructive or disappointing behavior. His behavior is always totally justified because he has been treated badly, and he deserves endless amends from the other members of the family. So I will confess, I don't like him. If I never have to see or interact with him again, I would not be disappointed. I will rise to the challenge of trying to do something useful if somehow it goes round and round and comes back to me that he's to be included in attempts to improve what's going on among the people who constitute this collective. I will not be joyous about that assignment. And at the moment, I would prefer if that never happens. So let me go up the ladder next to the next brother, who I also have had very little to do with. I have no reason to doubt the characterization of the non-parents, that he's an operator, that he just says what people want to hear. If he were left in charge actually of managing things, he'd be sloppy and chaotic and neglectful. He wouldn't be thorough and take good care of the family holdings at all. And so I don't detest him. I'm more open to learning more about him, but I'm not eager to have him in my client load. So if he stays apart from his siblings and stays apart from his parents mainly, I'm not going to feel bad and I'm not going to protest about that. Now the person I'm next most involved with, probably the grandma, the mother. I have not had many sessions where it was just she and I talking. There were a few. Over the years, she knew she had a terrible relationship with her daughter. They would actually be screaming at each other and storming out of places because they couldn't stand each other. And once in a while, she would call me up and ask for my wisdom about how to calm things down and what she could do to improve the flow between her and her daughter. And I would try and accommodate her, listen to her, and deal with that. As her husband has become increasingly incapacitated, there have been more conjoint sessions. How can they work out a division of labor? How can they be responsive to the aging changes that are taking place in both of them? And she often calls me now for help and how to manage him more creatively. And she wants me somehow to get him moving better. She will describe to me his moping, his incapacities, and then brainstorm with me. What could I suggest to him? Because he has a good relationship with me and he listens to me and he won't listen to her. So do I have any additional ideas about how to get him moving in a better way again? So I would have sessions with her recently about those kinds of things. I must say that I was terribly shocked to hear that she wanted to place him in an assisted living facility, and she did not want to go on sharing a space with him and being in any kind of partnership with him. She wanted her separateness and her freedom. She wanted to be alone in her own condominium, and other people should take care of him. She was burned out, and he's only getting what he deserved because he threw increasingly more and more on her, and he was less and less helpful to her. Therefore, she's burned out and has to recuperate. A confession. I am guilty of very, very conventional morality sometimes. I don't like the idea of a wife of an aging man wanting to just abandon him and go about her own business. Yes, that's what I visited. The petty, frightened next thought comes to me. Maybe my wife will do that to me one day. And it can happen. Look, it's happening now in another family. Maybe I'm going to be too much. Maybe I'll be in a coma and having diapers changed all the time and on and on and on. And she has said to me, she will be there regardless of what my final stages of life are like. Will I burn her out too? And is she really going to abandon me? Can I trust anyone in this world not to abandon me finally? So in some ways, there's a psychologist part of me that is very understanding of the wife. she had serious reservations about this marriage when these two were fairly young. When the issue of moving to Southern California came up, and she was hesitating, not certain she wanted to come and join her husband, and thinking about remaining behind in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and taking up a life suffered from him. I do know at least twice over all the years of their marriage, they did separate for a kind of trial separation for a month. So maybe this is correct. Maybe this is the best thing. Maybe she should take up a separate life. And she now resents him for all the burden she's gone through as becoming incapacitated. I'm not clear. I would have a belief, and a reasonable belief, that she's resented him all the time, even before he started to become incapacitated, that she never found his neediness, the texture of his personality, the reassurance and woundedness he brought to her. I'm never sure that she liked that or found it to her taste. I believe she may have had secret contempt for him and annoyance with him all the years they feigned that they were a married couple. And maybe this liberation for her will actually turn out to be good, not only for her, but for him. Wonder of wonders. So those are my comments about her and what gets stirred in me about the knowing of her. Ambivalence about whether I want to support what she's doing or whether I want to try and help her to resume a more ordinary kind of flow with him. Now I'm getting a little tearful. I would not like it if she refused to have anything further to do with him forever. If, for instance, there was some family meeting of some kind and she refused to go because he was going to be there. She wasn't willing ever to be present with him anywhere to talk to him about it. He has ideas about being in a separate state that maybe they could just enjoy the best of what they do. Maybe they could have a kind of dating relationship. She would continue to remain separate from him and not be responsible for anything practical in his life. He would find ways to take care of things, but occasionally they might go for an outing. Occasionally they might go to a play. Occasionally they might go to a museum, because he has a head full of delightful times they've done things like that. And he is beginning somehow, I'll talk more about him because he's my major concern at this moment. He's beginning to get ready for what would a separate life be. And it seems like he could work with that if it wasn't like his mother has died. If she were not to remove herself totally and thoroughly and completely from his life. The next most important person in terms of number of hours spent interacting with that person is the daughter. I have spent significant amounts of time with her. I helped her come down out of a psychosis when she was little. I then became the one who was a kind of career counselor for her, helping her to give up any notion of acting and to go back and get a marriage and family therapy license, helping her to move beyond that to become a kitchen designer and giving her practical suggestions on how to proceed, and then becoming a parenting coach because she decided to become a single mother and turned to me a lot about how to raise her little boy without a father. Finally, I was doing a lot of couples counseling with her and the man she finally married, her childhood sweetheart, who turned out to be a nightmare. And I had to help her to struggle as best she could with his craziness and at the same time help her to get ready to liquidate that marriage that she had made, which probably never should have been made. So I know her pretty well. She has a secret grievance with the family. She tries to talk about it, but she's ashamed. The secret grievance is she's frightened. She's now in her 60s and she is going to get older. She once had a few $1 million and was not worried about getting old in her old age. But she made bad investments and things, the real estate market went south and other investments turned bad and her large clients abandoned her. So her whole economic outlook changed about 10 years ago. And she's living now with greater fear that if she stays healthy, she may run through all of her money and be destitute. And that just terrifies her. So she's very protective of her parents' frugality. She doesn't want them in ventures or structures that are going to consume a lot of her holdings because she hopes to be nice to them and not get on the wrong side and be one of their heirs and make sure that she comes into, I think she named about 800,000 to $1 million she would like to come into in order to feel safe. So she is freaking out now. Yeah, I think I'll stick with her in this way. She had been getting ready before the parents got more incapacitated and incapable of taking care of their own lives. She had been getting herself emotionally ready, perhaps to move to the Bay Area. She had always loved it up there. It had been a dream of hers that she would wind up the end years of her life up there. She has kitchen design contacts up there. She could continue to carry out her career from the Bay Area, probably as well as here, with some trips down here occasionally. Her son is now 22 years of age and living independently. He doesn't need to be as attached to her as possible. He has a girlfriend. He lives on his own, and she would feel better about the possibility of moving a few hundred miles away from him now than she ever has up until now. It's been very important since she was the only parent to stick around and be close to him. But she was starting to see less of her family, to be more independent of them, to start turning away from them when they were pulling at her for that she needed to stop by and do something for them, because with my help, they had hired a case manager. She liked the case manager. He was very effective. He had endless resources. He had maids available. He had transportation people available. He had cooks available, all kinds of people, bookkeepers available, anybody who could help them manage their household. He could bring them in on a part-time basis and provide those services. And she didn't mind her parents spending that kind of money to kind of stabilize themselves. But now, with mother saying, I am going back to the condo, I'm not going to have any help, I'm going to live independently, and my husband is going to a skilled assisted living place. The daughter got freaked. What is the monthly nut going to be in the assisted living place? So since she had to rescue him immediately, mom had gone to the hospital with that cardiac event. It's still unclear what it was, but she made it clear by the time she returned from the hospital stay and from whatever occupational therapy and rehab they were going to give her before they released her, she did not want her husband living in the household. So the daughter stepped in. The middle brother, of course, said he has no interest or desire in doing anything helpful for either of his parents. As far as he's concerned, they could die. The older brother said, I'm just too busy. This is a bad time in my work life right now. I'm into starting some new enterprises and I have just no bandwidth, no space available to contribute anything to my parents at all. Maybe I'll go visit them once in a while, and that's the most I can make do. So she recruited her son's help, and they did absolutely yeoman work. I think I have an email from her here about her exhaustion. Here it is. My mother is at Berkeley East in rehab. Yeah, she had just been released from the hospital to start the rehab process. I think she is getting better. I have not really spent any time with her for the past 3 or 4 days since she went from the hospital to the rehab, because I have spent the past week getting my father situated at Hollywood Villa. It has been a massive job and I'm still not done. I had to order him a mini refrigerator and have it delivered. Get Spectrum to start internet service in his room. Try to find a used desk for him to have his computer on. I'm still looking. Arrange to have his computer moved from the house to his room. Trying to find someone to do this. Filling out or helping to fill out emergency forms in the rental agreement. Go and get a check from their house so he could pay the rent. I had to buy him some things for his bathroom, go shopping for food items he needs, coordinate details with the caregiver, arrange for someone there to help with medication management at night. In addition, I've been checking to make sure he is socializing and is okay. This is only a partial list. This situation has caused a disturbance in the family. My mother does not want to talk to my father at all and is not calling him. My youngest brother does not want to help because he's really mad at my parents for not making plans for their old age and says it is too emotionally damaging for him to be involved. My middle brother is not helping because he is too busy and assumes he does not have to do so because I will do everything. My son is mad at me because he thinks I should have let you and the case manager handle all of this. So my son is barely talking to me and won't talk to either of my parents. So it is a stupid mess. I am completely exhausted, not sleeping, and running myself into the ground, trying to take care of the details and trying not to neglect my kitchen clients. On one hand, my father is doing better than I thought he would. And on the other hand, he is a mess. I'm very angry at my mother because she just threw my father out without caring in the least how it would affect anyone else in the family. She ignored all of our pleas for my parents to make plans for this type of possibility, overburdened herself by refusing to have more caregiving help, and refused to unburden herself of things she did not to do, which contributed to her feeling overburdened, and then impulsively drops a turd into the family when she decides she is done with taking care of my father. I really hope my parents are reaching out to you for support and guidance. I am feeling very overwhelmed being the main person who is trying to manage the situation. I don't want to be in this position. She had threatened in an earlier email she was just going to bail. She was just going to stop, and whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And she couldn't allow herself to do that. She did continue to follow through until he was safely ensconced in Holiday Villa, which is not a very upscale place. It's a safe place. He gets his meals. There are a few people to talk to. There's hardly any organized activities there. The first time he contacted me to resume therapy with me after having switched over to there, his agenda, and now I'm back to him again, was that he needed to get out of there. There was too few people he was interested in talking to, and too little organized structure. So I talked to his case manager. His case manager has, of course, among other specialists, a specialist on skilled nursing facilities in the greater Los Angeles area. What are their strengths and weaknesses? What do they cost? What's pleasant about them? What's wanting for them? And he thought the specialist could find 3 or 4 more places other than the one he was in for him to go look at and try on. And sure enough, by the beginning of this week, he had identified another place that he said is wonderful. It's 2 blocks from the beach here in Santa Monica. It's on 2nd Street near the park that's over the bluff there from the thing. Yes, the cost is $15,000 a month. And he does have some long-term care insurance. So some of it, probably $5,000 or $6,000 a month, will be covered by that, but the rest will not. He talked to his own money manager. He was proactive, gave him the figures and said, can I do this? And he said, well, you will gradually have to eat up assets if you do this. You'll start dipping into your assets. But if you don't do anything else that's terribly expensive, you probably have enough money in your home equity and in other kinds of assets, stocks, bonds, other things you have to last you for 15 years if you do this. And you're 94 now, so you probably have headspace to be able to move over there and still be in charge. The last time I talked to daughter, she did bring, she wants to talk to me again for half a session this weekend. She's beginning to feel more centered. She's beginning to feel more peaceful. She's beginning to see her father come to life and to be more vibrant and more interesting and more fun-loving and more playful than she's seen him for 50 years. And so this indeed may be a wonderful thing that's happening to him. And I have information for her now. She told me, I hate to sound so fucking petty, but I am frightened. I'm afraid my father made an impulsive decision. He's not going to be able to afford what's happening, and he's going to exhaust all the money, and I'll have no inheritance. So I'm going to be able to tell her, you know what? I don't think your mother is probably going to be able to carry on life in that condo forever independently. And they're probably not going to have two residencies to pay anymore. Maybe she's going to insist on, if they have to sell the condo, going to a small apartment of her own, and maybe they will continue to have two different housing expenses. But maybe she'll see nice things in the skilled nursing facilities and decide there's room in the room he's in for a double bed, and decide to take up residence with him again because it's already being paid for. There will only be a small extra cost for her meals, and maybe that will happen. But my good news for you anyhow is at the rate he's spending, according to his money manager, he's 15 years out from exhausting all the money. So it's not likely he's going to live that long, and you probably are going to come into some kind of inheritance. So now I stand at a crossroads. When I started this project, I was totally flummoxed. I didn't know how I was going to proceed, who I was going to talk to, and what I was going to talk to them about. I should have been more patient and more willing to just be and let things flow, because in small degrees, connections have been established with the wife again, and she has her own agenda. Important connections have been recreated again with granddad. And I now have connections with daughter, and each one of them has an agenda. Each one of them is making a shift and an adaptation to the changes that are taking place. Each one of them is rising out of the desert of despair and beginning to do thoughtful planning about what is life all about. How can I still have some days ahead of me that don't feel scary or overburdening to me? I didn't have to come up with those things. They're educating me what they want me to talk about. And I'm just surrendering to talking about the things they're asking me to talk about. And the flow seems good. It seems worthwhile. And I started this whole brooding with you guys and searching myself, because I thought I needed to unblock myself in more creative ways in order to find what I was looking for. I forgot that they're helping me. I don't have to find everything I'm looking for by myself. So I learned many things, and I again want to share some of my internal processes. I learned about my own abandonment fears, and I revisited terrible moments in my life with my mother, who did, at least for the first 3 years of my life, abandon me to postpartum psychosis and not be available to me as a bonding agent in my early life, wounding me terribly forever. And I specifically remembered visiting the day when I walked into her room to try to cheer her up, and she told me all her troubles were due to me. If only I hadn't been born, her life would be fine. still hurts. So I resonate to the woman, the grandmother of the story, with that as a background. It's hard to just hold her with any kindness. Oh my God. I didn't talk about this. I didn't even notice it in the background. I don't have the same bitterness for their foibles towards my father nor towards my mother. I'm going to cry. That I used to have when I was small and a teenager. I now see them much more clearly. I now see the overwhelming burdens they were carrying. I now see the wounds that have been inflicted on them. In many ways, I've been back to visit my father's grave 4 times over the years of my maturity. Each time I go, our relationship shifts. He seems to get younger and more childlike when I talk to him. And I get older and older and more caring and more attentive and more forgiving of him. And those are the conversations we have. I'm just starting today. I need to do that with my mother. She was trapped. She didn't love my father. He was insisting she have a 3rd child. She didn't want a 3rd child. She didn't want the 2 she had. She was only having a 3rd child because he wasn't satisfied with 2 girls. He had to have a son. And she had to surrender to the potentate of the household. That poor woman, nobody cared about her. She was to service my father and to raise the children and to manage the household. Nobody gave a fuck about anything that was important to her. I don't blame her for cracking. What was magnificent was she finally pulled herself together as she got older. And I never gave her credit for that. I think I can get over my bitterness for grandma too. I don't know nearly as much about grandma's upbringing in this family as I know about my mother's. But I know it wasn't really wonderful. So that is a grand challenge for all of us. One we have to turn on ourselves too. We need to accept the awfulness of others. That doesn't mean we have to approve of it or encourage it, but we have to accept that it exists. That's how change starts, with an acceptance of what is. We have to give ourselves the same acceptance. We are broken people. We are destructive people. We are ugly people. We are stupid people, in addition to whatever kind and decent and worthwhile characteristics we have. And yes, we can struggle to overcome what is bad about us. We can struggle to soften it. We can struggle to make it better as long as we have breath. We're never going to get totally to the top of the mountain. And somehow that has to be okay with us. Oh. I became suddenly here with you guys. The client I talked about in group yesterday, whose story I found so moving. But I'll record him and pay him homage today by adding him to this narrative because suddenly he's on my mind too. He is a client who also grew up in a family that was very troublesome. His parents were very proper Britishers. They were cold. They didn't speak any language of feeling. They never gave hugs. They never gave warmth or encouragement. They were quite perfectionistic, driving their 3 boys to do better and better and better. And father had been badly wounded during World War II emotionally. He was a little boy during the Blitz, and he was terrified every day of his life because he had not been evacuated to the countryside, that the bombs were going to fall on him and kill him. And he grew up paranoid and suspicious and mistrusting of the world. And my poor client is very, very cautious. He can't take risks. He's always afraid the risk is going to turn out badly. The internalized parent will start screaming at him for being incompetent. So he has a very limited career. I don't fault him. I find his career a worthwhile one, but it's very limited in terms of his being able to take pleasure from it or to take much meaning from it. He works for a nonprofit, and the nonprofit's business is being very knowledgeable about current federal and state legislation that has grant money available for alternative forms of energy development. And the people up the chain from him go out to the oil companies and to the gas companies and to the electric companies, and they consult with them. Oh, and the big trucking groups with many diesel trucks, and they consult with them about the transformation that's coming and about what possible grant money is available if they're willing to participate in a study of changing some things and how they do some things in return for the grant funds. There are significant hundreds of millions of dollars laying around in the federal and state government coffers. And these guys are brokers who put entrepreneurs in touch with where public money is that they can tap into for projects they may want to try on. His job is to write the grants that are going to be filed with either the state or federal government. So he has to familiarize himself with what the project consists of, have an understanding of it from a technical point of view. He has to know something about engineering and biochemistry and all kinds of things. And he has to write up the final drafts of the grant and get them approved by his bosses so that they will be passed on. He's been doing this for 12 years. He's in a cubicle all by himself. He has very little interaction with anybody else on staff. So there's not much social life in that place. He has been passed over. He's never gotten a promotion. He's gotten cost of living increases over the last 12 years he's worked there, but no promotions to any higher ranks and more responsibilities. And he himself hangs back. He makes no attempt to get a promotion, A, because he doesn't feel like he deserves it, B, because he doesn't believe it will be given to him. Even if he asks for it, it will be too painful to ask for it, be turned down. And C, because anything else he could think of doing in that place would involve him having to do some form of public speaking, make presentations of something, interview other people about something, ask them meaningful questions. And he wants to throw up even thinking of the possibility of attempting to do any kind of public speaking. He knows he would make a fool of himself. He would be incoherent. He would just mess everything up, and everybody would see what an imposter he is. So 6 months ago, I proposed to him that he go to Toastmasters, which for those who may be watching this do not know, is a voluntary organization of people who have struggled with stuttering or any kind of anxiety impairment or structural impairment that makes it hard for them to speak aloud and to struggle with their limitations and to struggle to overcome them so that they can comfortably go to a podium and address some topic with listeners listening. So at my last session, much to my wonderment, towards the end of the session, he said, oh, by the way, I haven't told you yet, I went to Toastmasters the other night. I said, what? He said, yes, I got so despairing and felt so useless and so hopeless. And I do have a girlfriend now, and she keeps asking me, when can we get married? And I keep telling her, I don't really earn enough to support you, particularly since we may decide to have children and I couldn't afford it. So I can't propose to you yet. I have to do better. I was feeling crazy and desperate, so I went. And it started off easily enough. People got up out of their chairs one at a time. They introduced themselves, they said their name, and then they said what they hoped to get out of being a Toastmasters. So my turn came, and I stood up, and I said my name, and I was looking at the faces of the other people, and I broke up crying. I just sobbed and sobbed. I don't even know what I was crying about, but I couldn't speak. I could only cry and cry and cry. And some of the people in the room came up and they hugged me and they said, there, it's okay. This is what we're here for. Just cry as long as you need. It's no shame to cry. It's beautiful that you can come here and cry. And they were very, very kind to him and very reassuring. And after about 5 minutes, he got control of himself. And he didn't go on. He sat down and just listened to what other people were talking about the rest of the evening. But when he came to a session, he said to me with great enthusiasm, I can't wait to go back again. So my day here accepting my mother was very much like that crying he was doing. I couldn't stop myself. I felt her pain and not just mine. Oh, God. I forgot which famous person had posted up on his shaving mirror an aphorism. The aphorism was, the only person in the world I can never forgive is myself. The source of so much human hurt. Many of us lash out in rage because we are really directing outward the rage and contempt we feel for ourselves. That's so sad. I don't know where it's written that we are supposed to be unflawed human beings. Hmm. All right, I think I'm done for today a little early. My flow with my clients is all flowing and free. I have interesting ideas about what conversations to have with any of them who contact me next, and I'm good with that. I certainly am looking forward to seeing my Toastmaster client again to see what further adventures he may be at. All right, I'll turn this over to you guys.
Well, I did my postdoc for my doc project on families before, during, and after someone had to go into a nursing home.
Oh boy, that's a good topic.
Yeah, it's so disruptive for everybody. The guilt, the difficulty for the person going in, the guilt the family feels having to put someone in there. It's a really difficult time for everybody.
Yes, it is.
Um, yeah, I really did try to look at the research. I even looked into the caregiver burnout with the person
Yes.
being, having to take care of the person, and then their guilt, and then and there really isn't the sad part is it's just going to be difficult. The conclusion I came to was, oftentimes one of the best things we can do as a therapist is reassure people that they're making the right choice, that the situation had become somewhat untenable.
Well, that's a nice memory I have back. It's my former client who became my friend, who became my downstairs tenant. And I was keeping him company while his second wife was surrendering to Huntington's disease and turning into a vegetable. And he was trying to keep her at home. He was bringing all kinds of help in. He was making her meals and feeding them himself. So I started in a very devious way. I said, she is going to become a vegetable. You know that, and I know that. And one day you will not have the wherewithal to devote every waking moment to watching over her. You're going to have to take her off somewhere. You're trying to stall that as long as possible. Would you do something to nourish yourself? Would you take a little bit more time away, get anybody in who could just babysit her for a while, and go do some things that you'd like? Go see an old movie, go out for dinner with a friend, anything. You're just martyring yourself to the care of her, and it's going to come back and hurt you. And then I brought up the most heretical notion. Would he consider dating a woman during this period of time? Absolutely not. He was outraged that I suggested that to him. Well, fast forward, after a while, he did become ready and he placed her. And then something happened that he still feels very guilty about. As she deteriorated and became more and more hideous, twisted with her hands twisted into strange places, partly curled up, drooling, defecating in diapers. The pain of seeing her became too intense. Uh, so he had a ritual. Every day he would make a smoothie. She used to like the smoothies he made for her with fresh fruits and things in the blender. He would bring her a smoothie and feed it to her. He would get the straw in her mouth, and she was still able to suck. And as soon as she was done, he would flee. He just had to get out of there. He couldn't stay there anymore. But again, I started nagging him. Was there any way that he would start dating any woman, and in addition to any other thing he could do in his free time? Nope. And he didn't start that process until 1 year after she was dead.
Arthur, I was thinking about kind of like what is today about, and thinking of all the kind of like the great importance of kind of like the end of life, and the end of life providing for others a peaceful end of life, and whatever that can be, with all the kind of like medical problems and family service and money situations. But how is it that you can ensure, and maybe you can't, kind of like a peaceful end of one's life, and so that in some ways that maybe even kind of like forgiveness of all the kind of like the relatives that were mean or unkind, or but just kind of like, is there a way to do that, and is that do family members have a responsibility
No.
to do that?
I don't think there are any legal statutes about a responsibility to do that. I don't know what you mean. Do family members have a responsibility to do that?
Well, just in, so if you care about a family member, or even if you if you don't care about a family member, do you try to make kind of like an end of life, or better, or peaceful for a person? I'm faced in terms of like my family with conservatorship on one side, and ailing in-laws on another side.
How
With
impaired are your in-laws?
very. It's like my father-in-law is in constant need of attention and care, and his wife, who is his primary caregiver, my wife's mother, is
Lord.
becoming more impaired in terms of almost becoming totally without sight. Or so it's just it's like, well, how do you as kind of like bodies fail, or situations get worse, how do you provide a peaceful ending for for people?
Oh, Scott, first, please accept my condolences. You are truly in the sandwich generation, being pushed with responsibilities from your children below and oppressed with responsibilities from the adults above.
Yeah. Huh.
The only comfort I have for you is in a period of time, it will all resolve and go away. But the journey is not going to be fun at all. It's going to be awful.
No,
When
no,
you're a very caring person, I don't believe you can just walk away and ignore what's going on.
no, you can't. You can't.
You sent me visiting my mother's last 4 months dying of pancreatic cancer. You know, it was awful. And yet I purposely parked her in a skilled nursing facility that was halfway between my office at that time and my home at that time. And I would stop by late in the day, every day. And I would stay there for at least an hour, just holding her hand. After a while, she couldn't even talk. I would just be there. I'm gonna cry. I hated every minute of being there.
Well, that, but it was
I had
comforting for her.
I had to go and be there. And on the weekends, I'd pick up my two little kids and I would take them to play on her bed. And the three of us would be there with her. And I am telling you, when she finally died, it was such a liberation. Oh, God. And I believe it was a liberation for her too. She was in great pain and misery. By the way, I don't know if you knew this, but there is a new profession and there's a struggle going on whether they should be licensed or not. It's called death doulas.
Hmm.
And they are indeed kind people who come and are there in residence, interacting with the dying person, telling them inspiriting things, trying to bestow kindness on them, trying to help them think through what they may need to be doing before they die. It's a whole new career.
Hmm.
And there's going to be a fight about whether the insurance company should pay for it.
Everyone
Wealthy families will be able to afford that.
at convalescent hospital, once someone transitioned into more of a hospice care, they
Mhm.
would 24-hour attention. There would be somebody with them.
Yeah.
I don't think they were particularly well trained, but they were there.
Well, this is a group of people who have been specially trained in the challenges of death and dying.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I like that. When I saw an article about it in the paper, I was very pleased.
No,
we're-
it's a great idea.
Yeah, in general, most people are very uncomfortable with with even talking about the subject, let alone
Yes.
being around.
And if you're getting hospice care, yes, a nurse stopped by, other people stop by, but they're not concentrated on what your consciousness is like and what you're thinking and what your belief system is or what your feeling states are all about. They just
Yeah.
want to make sure they're keeping you physically comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Scott, I'll do that. This is worth recording for the public. Did I tell you yesterday about the establishment of care courts in California?
Yes, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Well, for the public, California is taking a step into a great unknown. It is doing something about trying to reach people who are very damaged and not getting the care they need, whether it's physical or mental health care. So California has now established what's called the Care Court. I forgot what the initial CARE stand for, but any adult can file a petition before the care court naming another adult who is in need of care and is not getting the care they need. And there will be a hearing. And a friend of the court is appointed to represent the person who's being petitioned to do something with and helps that person understand the court proceedings and what the alternatives are. And the judge hears what is the case being made that this person is incapacitated and what kind of care should this person be receive. And the judge has the right now to order it. And the person is ordered. You have to come off the streets by order of the court. I'm sending you there is a unit waiting for you at such and such a place. The friend of the court here will be with you and escort you to your new destination, help you settle in. And it may be a referral to a psychiatrist, to a therapist, any number of things. a drug control program, a drug rehab program. All kinds of things are on the agenda for the judge to order without having to go through a long, expensive conservatorship process. That is something very pioneering. I can't wait to see how it works out. And here's my wonderful cynicism. The American Civil Liberties Union will bring a pleading tomorrow that this is an unconstitutional law. It's an infringement with the civil rights of the person who's going to be taken before the court.
Hmm.
So that is one of the great existential questions of our current civilization. Does one have a basic civil right to be left alone, to be self-destructive and dangerous to other people? Or just horribly obnoxious to the body politic?
I think you're,
Is that a civil right?
I think obnoxious is okay. Yeah, I think you're allowed to be obnoxious.
Well, Jesus,
Oh.
here's, this isn't happening to me, but we all get these neighborhood postings now on the internet about what's going on in the neighborhood. In our neighborhood, about a mile from here, there is a homeless man that lives in his car, and his family has disowned him. They bring him food in his car. His car is parked about half a block from where he is, but they will not let him in the house. And the police keep saying there's nothing they can do. And he starts blowing the horn in the middle of the night on his car 60 or 70 times, waking everybody up in the neighborhood. Does he have a civil right to do that?
No, he's disturbing. He ought to get locked up for a little while. Maybe they'll have a second thought about it.
We say they can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
they can do something about that.
they could, but yeah, doesn't seem to be the thing. Yeah, and maybe he does need a full mental health evaluation, but maybe he's just obnoxious. Yeah. Just buy some
Okay.
earplugs.
Hmm?
Just buy some earplugs.
Buy some earplugs.
Hmm.
So on this last moment of blowing my own horn, I will say goodbye to you today.
Okay.
And I have no idea what my topic will be next week.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, we'll see you all.